This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am Jason Romano. My email address, jason@sportspectrum.com. Love to hear from you, any feedback you might have, any thoughts about future guests on the show. You can email me, jason@sportspectrum.com. And we are presented today by Ronald Blue Trust. We all have questions right now on the financial landscape, on our financial futures. Where do we go? What do we do? Ronald Blue Trust advisors apply biblical wisdom and technical expertise, and they help their clients make wise financial decisions. We trust them. We think you will too. Check them out at ronblue.com. ronblue.com. Today on the show, we welcome Sal Giardina to Sports Spectrum. I met Sal a couple years ago at one of the conferences that our parent company, Pro Athletes Outreach, puts on. And, the first thing I thought was, this guy has a pretty awesome beard. And then I went to his Instagram page and his Twitter page, and he posts some pictures of his playing time, when he's in the middle of a season. And he grows an epic mustache for every year that he plays professional baseball. And he's going to tell you about his epic mustache in a little bit. This is actually really good stories from a guy who's been through it all as a pro baseball player, except making it to the major leagues. Drafted in the 31st round of the 2014 MLB June Amateur Draft by the Atlanta Braves out of Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida. Grew up in Valrico, Florida, Bloomingdale High School there, and then came into professional baseball on the minor league level, starting in Rome, New York with the Rome Braves, low A ball, and then eventually to Carolina, Mississippi, Gwinnett, and Florida, between making his way through the minor league system, A, low A, high A, double A, triple A. Gwinnett Stripers was where he last played in 2019, and he hasn't achieved that dream. He hasn't made it to the majors yet, whether it's with the Atlanta Braves or another team, but Sal's not given up, and he's got the Lord to thank for this journey, and he tells a really great story of faith. But man, the life of a minor league baseball player is not dull, and he's experienced a lot, and he tells a lot of those stories here today on the show. Take a listen to Sal Giardina joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Sal, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, buddy. Good to talk to you. Let's start with quarantine time. Just following you on Twitter and Instagram, there's two things that have stood out. First of all, you love to fish and you love video games. Am I off on that, or is that pretty much what life has been like the last few months?
That is what life has been like. I go work out in the morning, go fish, or come home, play video games, hang out with my wife.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're married too, so we got to work the wife in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, thankfully, she is actually very supportive of me playing video games. It's just kind of my downtime, my decompressing for me. And
it's your escape.
Yeah, exactly. And she is we both like to have our alone time where she likes to do her studying. She likes to hang out. Mine is clear my head, come up, either go fishing or come up here. So it's been a nice time.
No, that's good. I saw a picture, I think it was from late March on your Instagram, of you catching a shark, or maybe you weren't even catching a shark. You were just you were in the boat and like posing with a giant shark in the water. I assume that's one that you caught. But That just, I remember the line from Jaws, a large predator, that we've caught. And I'm thinking the mayor said that in Jaws, but Sal's living that in real life here, catching a large predator. Is that like the giant? I don't even know. Is that the biggest fish you've ever caught?
So,
shark?
I've recently, within the past year, shark fishing has been kind of a thing that I've gotten into, and there is no more. I think that because it's a predator, I think it makes the fight even more like an adrenaline rush. Like, you have something that could literally bite your arm off on, and you're fighting it for 45 minutes to an hour.
Is that how long you're fighting for?
Yeah, so it's crazy. They are just such strong fish. You fight them for 45 to an hour. I had one on. I actually went out yesterday with my brother-in-law, and we actually were trailing a shrimp boat. And what happens is when the shrimp boat catches fish and stuff, they dump it out. And so all the sharks just trail the boat. So we're like, let's just go back there and see if we can't. Well, we both hooked up at the same time. So mine was probably 120 pounds and his was right around 80 pounds. And we had the boat neutral, and the boat was just getting pulled by the sharks because they were both going different ways. It was fun.
It sounds like a real life horror movie, just thinking out loud when you see Jaws and the shark literally just carrying the boat down the stream. I don't know. That doesn't sound fun to me, my friend. I'd be scared to death, I think, but I'll probably have to go with you and then hide behind you, and you can be my anchor man.
That's fine, man. I've had so many people reach out like, dude, you got to take me. Like, it looks so much fun. And I mean, if you know what you're doing, I fished with a guy like 3 or 4 months ago, and that's what he does for a living. He shark fishes and then tags the sharks.
Right.
And talking to him about it, like, there's so much that goes into it with the research, and it's cool to learn about the sharks, because realistically, I've thrown in bloody baits and there's sharks right there and they don't bite. Even sometimes they won't bite. It just depends on the shark itself. So, I mean, people think that your sharks are going to bite you. They're not as aggressive as you think. They're aggressive, but not as aggressive as everybody thinks.
That's cool.
Really.
Sal Giardina is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. A year ago, June 11th or so, I'm going and reading an Instagram post from you. And you post, I don't have the entire Instagram, but I'll just read 4 things that you specifically posted about baseball and your journey. Phantom DLs, a bus crash, a coaching stint, and now a torn UCL. And it was really leading up to the torn UCL that took place just about a year ago on an injury. You're a catcher and first baseman, and you were injured pitching. Take me back a year ago, where you were on this minor league baseball journey, which I do want to dive into a little more as well, and kind of all that's transpired now leading up to where we are as we record this in the early summer.
So last year, I started off on the year as a Phantom DL catcher. So what that means for people who don't know, most of the time every team can only carry 25 players, and normally they need other guys who can stay ready if somebody goes down. So they, instead of releasing you or getting rid of you, they put you on the Phantom DL. And what that means is you're on the disabled list, but you're not really hurt.
Right.
So I started the year off on the Phantom DL, which I've done for the past 5 seasons.
Really?
Every year I've started off on the Phantom DL. And I ended up coming off 2 weeks in. One of our catchers, Alex Jackson, had a concussion. So I came off and started playing, was doing really, really well. And then once Alex Jackson came back in, I got put back on the Phantom DL. Then another catcher went down, got pulled back off the Phantom DL. So I was having a really good year, started playing a lot. And then we go into a game in June, and we were down by, I think, 11 runs. And we ended up, coach asked me, hey, do you mind pitching last inning? And this would have been my 10th appearance in professional baseball as a pitcher. So I've done this a bunch of times.
That's a lot, actually, for somebody who's not a pitcher.
Yeah. So I've done this plenty of times and never had any issues. And like I was telling Jay earlier, I had two up, 2 out, got the third guy to hit a ground ball. He ends up beating it out. So I have to face the 4th batter, and he's actually leading the league at hitting. He's got the best batting average, Jake Cronenworth. So I got him 0-2, and I said, you know what, I'm going to rear back. I'm going to try to see if I can strike this guy out. And as soon as I threw it, I felt the pop. And all I said to myself was, man, hopefully it's not torn. Like, I just hope it was something that just popped. And I tried to throw the next pitch, and it almost went to the backstop because it hurt so bad. I was like, okay, let me just lob this one in there. Let me get him out. So I ended up throwing a pitch at 54. He popped out, and I walk off the mound. I look at my coach, and I said, I just blew out. And he was like, you're kidding. I was like, no. I was like, I 100% just blew out. I go up to the training room. They look at it. They said they couldn't tell right then, but the next day we had a doctor come in. He was like, yeah, it's probably torn. So I ended up calling our team doctors, went over some stuff. They wanted me to get PRP shot, and just praying about it with my wife. With how I'm a 27-year-old, I'll be a free agent after this year. I just felt that in the long-term things, I thought the surgery was going to be better for me. Just in case the PRP didn't work. And 3 months from then, I'm getting surgery. Now, by the time I recover, I'm 28, and I'm an old catcher in the game. So, and I thought, just if I get the surgery, now if we have kids, God willing, I'm able to throw with my kids. I'm able to throw batting practice, that type of stuff. So.
Yeah. So this is the AAA level for those listening or just tuning in. It's the Gwinnett Stripers, right? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yes,
the Stripers,
mm-hmm.
which is the Atlanta Braves AAA affiliate. And so you're there. You're a step away from the majors. What's going through your mind when you realize you say I blew out, when you knew that your arm was done, and you're probably getting close to, you're chasing this dream for a reason. You're not wanting to be a AAA baseball player for your entire life. You want to try and chase this dream, as everybody does, to get to the majors, and there's another setback. What's kind of the mindset for you once you realize got to have surgery, and trying to figure out what the Lord's trying to tell you and teach you during these times?
So the biggest thing was me, is like you said, is just seeing what the Lord was teaching me through that. And I just, realistically, I wanted to trust God through this. As much of a setback it was, and you talked about it earlier, I've had plenty of those throughout my career. And I thought, I just tried to keep telling myself, this is just another thing for the story. If I ever make it to the big leagues, God willing, this just makes my story so much better.
Well, talking to Eric Kratz, we've had him on the podcast. I don't know if you've ever talked to Eric. Mm-hmm. He's been in our conferences that you and I have been at. That's a guy who's been grinding it out for 17 years or so, and made his debut. I think he was 30, and up and down, even in the mid to late 30s, up and down from the minors to the majors, and probably has even more stories than you have. And we've had him on the show and shared a few of those. But there's a mindset, I guess, that has to take place for you to want to keep grinding here, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think it was in 2016, I had been coming off Phantom, and then actually was in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm playing for the Carolina Mudcats. And I had been going to Elevation Church up there, and I actually was helping out at the Raleigh campus. So I would serve in the morning, go to the service, and then go to the field after that.
That's awesome.
And just getting in there, I heard Furtick talk about something, and it was talking about more of God has a plan for you, whether that's getting you to where you want to be, or it's getting others to where they want to be. And it's something that I've kind of prided myself through my minor league career, is I may not be here to make it to the big leagues, but I may help somebody else get to the big leagues by changing their mindset, or just being the guy in the clubhouse that points people to Jesus. That type of thing goes a very long way. And that's kind of something that I've tried to pride myself on through my career.
We'll get back to our conversation with Sal Giardina in just a moment, but want to tell you a little bit more about our friends at Ronald Blue Trust. And in these financial times that are so uncertain, coming out of a pandemic, so many of us, including myself, have questions. Where do we go? Where do we invest? What do we do with our money? How do we know that we're going to be okay for the future? Well, Ronald Blue Trust is the place to turn when you have those questions. See, their company's certified financial planning professionals offer comprehensive financial planning and investment management services based on biblical principles. That's why we love them, to individuals and families across the U.S. who are beyond the debt problem stage but want to be good stewards of their wealth. They got a ton of experience, almost 40 years of experience, and Ronald Blue Trust is a name that we do put our faith in when it comes to financial questions. You need to go check them out, ronblue.com, ronblue.com. They handle everything from investment management to charitable planning, also offer custom services such as cash flow management, personalized tax planning. They can handle all these things, all these matters, while you do your thing, so you don't have to worry about your finances. Ronald Blue Trust. Check them out at ronblue.com. Now back to our conversation with Sal Giardina here on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. That is a great mindset. I'm releasing this new book that I wrote about on leadership, and one of the titles of the chapters is Bloom Where You're Planted. And I think that exemplifies that. Like, all right, you would love to be in the majors, obviously, and that dream to come true. But if God has you in Carolina or in Mississippi or in Florida with the Fire Frogs, which is a great nickname, or the Gwinnett Stripers, if that's where God has you, you need to bloom right there where you're planted and be a light where you are. When did that make sense to you to do that? Because initially you were in the 31st round drafted back in 2014 out of Lynn University, which I'd never heard of until I until I met you. So I'm guessing there's not a whole lot of Lynn University Major League Baseball players out there, but you get your chance, but you realize at some point, okay, I got to be able to bloom where I'm planted right now, whether it's high A, low A, double A, triple A, or whatever. When did you start to realize that was the purpose that God had you playing baseball for?
So after the draft, I ended up going to the mini camp, playing really well. Actually got and skipped rookie ball, went straight to low A. And in low A, I didn't put this in the picture, but in low A, I'm playing first base, playing really well. I get trucked on a bad throw. Runner runs me over. I end up hitting my head on the ground, getting a concussion. Well, while I'm getting all my CT scans, all that done, I get pulled into an office by a doctor, and they tell me they found a tumor or a cyst in where my neck meets my brain. And I was 22 at the time, a 22-year-old sitting in an office with your team trainer, first time on my own throughout a whole season, and someone tells you that you might have a cyst on your brain and it could be cancerous. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. It was just a water cyst, nothing I had to be worried about. But all the feelings just go through my head, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing through this time? I'm away from family. I'm away from this. I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to do. And I just tried to stick to God's word through it and just stay faithful to what he has in store and what I'm supposed to do for him through this. And I can't say that I wasn't frustrated through my career, because I've had my frustrations where I don't know if I should play anymore. But I just kept, like I said, I just try to keep telling myself, this is where God has you, and just do what wherever he has you, do what he needs.
Yeah. And he'll make it clear when it's time to not do this anymore. He'll shut the door quicker than probably you or I could ever try and shut a door in that journey. Where does that faith come from? Where'd that start for you? Where'd that take shape for you?
So, you know my brother, so it kind of helps us out. When I grew up in Catholic church, going to Catholic church growing up, but I knew who God was, but I never really went to church because I wanted to. It was something that we did every Sunday as a family, but it wasn't something that I actually wanted. Yeah. Once baseball kicked in, when I was about 10 or 11, when we were going to tournaments every Sunday, we stopped going to church. And it wasn't until college I had gone through it was my first year on my own, my freshman year in college. I'm at a junior college. I just found myself partying, doing stuff that I wasn't supposed to. And I was having a really rough time. I didn't know what I wanted to do away from my parents. And my brother called me one weekend. I was coming home to see my family. My brother called me and was like, hey, I'm going to share my testimony with a youth group. Like, I would love for you to come and hang out. So I'm he's sharing his testimony and listening to it. And he literally was going through exactly what I was going through when he got saved. And I just felt like God was talking to me that night. Like, this is not what I have for you. And I just remember listening to my brother talk about the things he was going through, and I saw the things change in his life. Like, I saw him be more loving. I saw him want to care for me and my sister. and which he had always cared for us, but like I saw a different type of love.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw that, and we were at church that weekend, and I was just sitting there praying, and I kept making eye contact with the pastor at our church. And at the end of the service, he just said, like, I feel like there's someone in their 20s that's just struggling with their faith. And I just literally felt everything come on to me. I started breaking down in tears because I knew, like, this was God speaking to me. And it was that day that I gave my life to Christ. And obviously there's been struggles throughout after that time, but it's been such a blessing for me, and I've been able to see it. My brother and I have seen it in our family. My dad, my mom have both given their life to Christ. My sister recently gave her life to Christ. So it's been such a cool thing to watch.
That's awesome. We're in a similar situation. It was my brother who led me to the Lord, and he was the first in our family to get saved. And we grew up in a Catholic household, Italian, Romano, Giardina. I mean, right there alone, we have a kinship, right? But we grew up in the same kind of, I guess what you would say, household. And, you know, my parents were divorced when I was young, but yet church was kind of there. My grandfather, George, would take us to church a lot. And yet it wasn't until my brother became the first and I watched him and I said, I want what he has. And I think I want you to kind of go deeper into this, Sal, because you didn't have to have it all figured out. You didn't have to know exactly what the Bible said about this or that, or have this deep theological, I don't know, background or belief, or go get your PhD in biblical studies before you could say yes to Christ. You just said yes, and then it begins the journey. So tell me about that, and kind of walking through this process that I like to tell people that really doesn't stop the sanctification until we leave this earth.
And I don't think it ever stops, like you said. And I think realistically, you just come as you are. I think so many people think, well, I got to clean this up before I come to Christ. I got to do this before I come to Christ. And that's not the case. We need to come as we are, and God's going to give you the wisdom. He's going to give you patience. He's going to give you all of that through the Holy Spirit. And I think the more you read God's word, it lives within you. The more you read it, the more you live it out, the more you point people to Jesus from God's word.
What have you been learning from the Lord during the pandemic in terms of having to press pause and even everything that's happened past the pandemic with the society and culture and all that's going on in the world? What's the great lesson the Lord's shown you during all that?
I mean, he's been speaking to me a lot. I think just being slow to speak and quick to listen during this time. I think we are supposed to love people the way Jesus loved the church. And I think right now that is the biggest thing we could do, is love on everyone. Love on everybody and point people to Jesus during this time. I think we as a human race will never have a time like this ever again, where we are so slowed down and we have with no work, all that through the pandemic, where we have enough time to sit here and read God's word. I think it's become almost like a sabbatical for some of us. Like we have, for me personally, I mean, I've never had this much downtime where I try to set a time every morning. Okay, I'm going to wake up, read my Bible, do my prayer every day. And even during season, we get so sped up that we're not able to do that.
Yeah.
So I think God's been speaking that to me, and just also being just slow to, I would say, just slow to anger, and be, like I said, listen to people. I think sometimes we get so opinionated and we don't hear other people's side of the story. You being married, you understand, like, you're going to have differences with your wife. And
sure.
I think taking a step back and trying to see my wife's perspective on some things has made this a lot easier. And I just think God's definitely been speaking that to me, like, be able to hear her perspective, be able to hear others' perspective through all this.
Sal Giardina is our guest on Sports Spectrum. Let's close with some story time, just because Instagram post that you posted on June 11th.
Mhm.
It mentioned the Phantom DLs. You alluded to that. We talked about the torn UCL that you've recovered from and are recovering from. But then you mentioned a bus crash and a coaching stint. And I just have to imagine, just being a minor leaguer for 4 or 5 years that you've been, there's stories there that you can't even experience as a major leaguer because it's a different world. So let's start with the bus crash first. What was that story? Share that one.
So in 2015 in Carolina, I was in high A. I was actually on the Phantom DL. We are on a trip from, I forgot where we were coming from, but we were going to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to play the Pelicans. And I remember clear as day. I normally sleep on the floor on the bus because I usually double up with somebody, so I end up laying on the floor.
Yeah, you're not flying. You're not flying first class, right?
No, we're not flying first class. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm asleep on the floor, and I'm like in between where the seats are. So like my head is close to the seat, and I remember at right around 3 o'clock in the morning, a hat falls off the top of the roof and hits me in the chest and wakes me up. And for some odd reason, I said, you know what? I'm going to get in my chair. I'm going to sleep with my head against the thing and just fall back asleep. Well, I remember falling back to sleep, and I hear, oh, excuse my language, from the bus driver. And I just remember, like, you hear people when you get into a car accident, like, just go relax your body. And I just remember myself telling myself, go limp. And I went limp, and I just remember our bus flipping and sliding about 20 yards.
Oh my gosh.
And I was sitting next to Matt Marksberry, left-handed pitcher, and I just remember him grabbing me like this because I was outside. I was sliding on the window and was almost coming out of the bus because the windows had blown out.
Yeah.
And I remember hitting the roof so hard that when we came out of it, when the bus stopped moving, my shoes were on different sides of the bus because they had flown off of my feet. I hit the roof so hard. So we all just come to it, and I think we were all in such shock that we were in the bus still when the fighters had got there.
Oh my
God.
God.
That's how long we sat in the bus because we were just all in shock and we didn't know what to do. And then someone's like, hey, we got to get out of the bus. So some people started getting out of the emergency exit. And by that time, the firefighters were already there. So it was crazy. And to think of it, I mean, I tried to see God's hand through it. And where we had slid, if we would have flipped and slid 5 feet to our right, we would have hit a bunch of oak trees. It was a crazy night.
Well, if you had stayed on the floor, what could have happened to you? Yeah.
We had one of our teammates, he hit the roof so bad with his neck. He had messed up his back, and he was never able to play again because his back was so messed up. Yeah.
What was that like after that? And I'm sure not everybody was injured in a way. And then you still have. Did you play the game that you were headed towards?
So we
playing?
had they gave us 3 days off.
Okay.
But I think the craziest part of it was everyone was on edge riding the bus the rest of the year. We'd hit one bump, and everybody's up, like looking around. I couldn't sleep the rest of the year on a bus. I still have trouble sleeping on buses now. But it just made everybody on edge every time we would drive.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a story to tell. Honestly, that probably just ends up in, chalking that up in the gratitude box, like you said, because, there's a lot to gripe and complain about. There's a lot to be angry about, like you said in James 1:19, to be slow to anger. But when you go through an experience like that's a different type of, that's really like a what's it called? A life after death type of experience that some people, talk about. Your life flashes before your eyes, right?
Mm-hmm. And it just made me realize, and that was part of the season that I kind of got, where I kind of had the mindset of, okay, this is so much more than baseball.
Right.
And I think it had that life life and death experience kind of gave me that realization. Like, there's so much more to life than baseball. And as much as I want to be a professional baseball player for the rest of my life, it's not going to happen. And I think being in a clubhouse, we are in a unique position to be able to impact people. And I think not many people get to spend 160 days with the same 25 guys. So that's kind of been, like I said, my mindset to have.
Tell me the story of the coaching stint that you experienced.
2017. It's the day before camp breaks and spring training. I get pulled on the golf cart by the catching coordinator and our farm director. And I'm like, okay, my career's over. I'm getting released.
Yeah.
And they pull me in and they go, Sal, we obviously love you as a player. We love you as a person. And this is why we want to offer this to you. We don't do this very often, but we don't think your playing career is over, but we also want to see what you think about coaching. So they asked me, do you want to be a player coach this year? Wow. So I was on the Phantom DL. I would hit BP in the first group to stay ready in case somebody got hurt. But I would throw BP to the third group, and I would coach first base every night. And I would be in the coach's room to kind of hear some of the way the meetings went, stuff like that, how reports went. And it was just, they wanted me to get a feel for how coaching would be, because they want me to coach after I'm done playing. And it was a weird time for me, man. I was in the clubhouse with guys, and being the guy that I am, I love just hanging out and doing that. And I just realized, like, I can't do this all the time because now I'm a coach. Like, I kind of had to find the in-between. And I only did it for a month. Someone ended up getting hurt, and I ended up being a player the rest of the year. And then at the end of the year, they called me and, hey, we got some coaching spots up. Like, do you want to coach? And I told them, I said, to be totally honest with you, and this is no disrespect, but no, I'm not ready to coach. I think I want to play until I can't play anymore, and I can coach when I'm done. So it was a very cool experience. It was just weird to be a player and a coach at the same time.
Yeah, I think the only person that comes to mind is Pete Rose, right? I mean, he was a manager and a player in the mid 80s. I remember as a kid growing up and seeing him, and I'm like, how can you manage and be a player every day? And obviously we saw what happened in the outcome of all that after with Pete, but I don't know too many other people that's happened on any level. Is this fairly common in the minor leagues?
So it's not. It's actually very rare. And I took it as more of an honor that they thought of me as a player and someone who was going to be a coach one day. So I thought that was really, really cool. It's just, going through your career, you never think that it's going to come to an end. And when I had that stint, it just made me realize, like, I'm not ready to give up playing. I have the rest of my life to coach.
Yeah. And coaching is something, though, that you would consider someday.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. I think I want to coach pro ball, but I don't know if I want to do the college route or something like that. I just, obviously, God willing, I play for another 10 years, but I would love to coach. I just think it's a cool way to impact people. Like I said, it's a different way of, not many people get to spend that many hours, that much time with a certain group of people.
As I close, I got to ask you about your mustache. Right now, as we talk on Zoom, you have a nice full beard going, but when you play, and this might be just a Sal thing, but sometimes you have pretty epic mustaches going on as a player. Tell me about the intentionality of that.
Oh man, it's such a funny story. We were in 2014 when I got drafted. Our rule as the Braves was no facial hair. You can have nothing. You can have no facial hair, but if you have a mustache, that's okay.
Okay.
So I had just gotten done with the doctor. I was coming out of concussion. And it was just a rough time. And I was like, I'm going to grow a mustache just as a joke. And I grew it, and every place we would play, the fans would go nuts. The mustache, they would love it.
Yeah.
And it became almost like a symbol or like a trademark for me, because everywhere I might not be the best player on the team, but people know who I was because of my mustache.
Yes.
We would go, the mustache guy, and I would go out to eat, and you're the kid that plays for the Mudcats with the mustache. And it just became like a trademark thing for me. So every season I decided I'm going to grow it from day one of spring training until the end of the year. And then once the season's over, I shave it off.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
You were planning on doing that this year until the pandemic, I presume,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Sal Giardina, this is awesome, man. Thanks for some stories, for sharing your heart, and just appreciate you being willing to come on. And hopefully we get you on and you're seeing that dream achieved of playing in the major leagues. And either if it doesn't happen, just in talking to you, I know that, you're okay with that, and God's got a great plan for you either way. So thanks for doing this, buddy. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure just being able to share some stories and just be able to speak about God's word and God's love.
And many thanks to Sal Giardina for joining us today on the show. He's got some great stories. And I mean, between Phantom DLs, a bus crash that he survives in Carolina, a coaching stint where he becomes a player coach, and that's so rare in baseball, pro baseball, and then tearing his UCL, pitching, even though he's a catcher and first baseman, and his epic mustache. There's a whole lot going on with Sal Giardina, and I hope you'll give him a follow on Instagram and follow along with his fishing journeys and his baseball journey, and certainly life as a pro baseball player. Check him out, Sal Giardina, Giardina on Instagram. Thanks to Sal. We really do appreciate him joining us here today on the show. Also, thanks to our sponsors, Ronald Blue Trust. Financial needs, financial questions, the current climate, what does it look like? Check them out, ronblue.com, and consider them. They can really help you through whatever needs you have when it comes to finances. Ronald Blue Trust, we love them. Check them out at ronblue.com. We also want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com. That's the home base for all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. You can find our podcast there. You can find our articles there, all day long articles on the intersection of sports and faith. And every single morning, Monday through Friday, we have a daily devotional to start your day right with the Lord. Check it out at sportspectrum.com. And if you're listening to this podcast, I should say, whatever app you're listening to this podcast on, do us a favor, click that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. And then if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, do us another favor, if you could, really quick, and leave a review. Those reviews help us get the word out about Sports Spectrum. So any review that you can leave over on the Apple Podcast app would be great here with Sports Spectrum. Thanks again for tuning in today. We really do appreciate it. And we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.